I'm Tracy Defoe from Kata Cascadia, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to this special Kata School Cascadia event. Today, we're happy to welcome Gerd Aulinger to Kata School Cascadia. This has been a frequently requested meeting. If we could please get Gerd here to talk about the book that he wrote 10 plus years ago with Mike Rother called Toyota Kata Culture. So I'm going to turn it over to Gerd in just a minute, but first I'd like to recognize our helpers today. Mark Rosenthal, Maria Grazenka, and also Gemma Jones is here with us to help out with this meeting. So feel free also to continue to use the chat for questions or comments or applause or something like that as we go. Gerd, over to you.
So thank you very much, everybody, for coming. Yes, thank you so much, Tracy, for this opportunity to have some exchange regarding our book. So I will try to share some ideas, what I've been working on, what I've been doing with Kata 15, 20 years now. I've been collaborating with Mike for quite a while now, even before Kata had a name. And well, from there, it was quite a journey that culminated in this orange book. That is an attempt to show where I think Kata should evolve to, and it's a management system. In my opinion, Kata should be routines at the core of a management system. And well, I will share some ideas why I think that is the case. The idea here, as the subtitle says, expanding Kata into every corner of our organizations in order to learn and innovate collectively by ensuring that everyone is a coach and everyone has a coach. My question all the time was, well, how far should we expand Kata? Yeah. And so I want to start with a simple example calculation that I show quite often of a typical situation in a company. And suppose you have a company with 1,111 people, as shown here in this pyramid. You have one person at the very top, might be the CEO, the president, director. He has 10 direct reports. These 10 direct reports, they have each 10 direct reports, so it multiplies to 100. And then they below them, they have 1,000 people total. So the first question always is, how many problems can a person solve a day? That's a question I always think when thinking about problem solving and Kata. So how much problem solving capacity can we develop in a person? And if you think about solving problems yourself, not delegating and solving problems in a way that they will not come back. So really removing the root cause so the problem is solved forever. So how many problems can one person solve in one day so that they are solved forever, really solved? And if I ask this question to different people, they say, well, 1, 2 per day, really solving them forever. And I don't know, maybe 5 if they are smaller problems, but it's not like dozens of problems. So if everybody can solve, like, let's say, just as an example, 5 problems per day, how many problems should an organization with 1,111 people be able to solve? The answer to this depends to how many levels of that organization will you be activating as problem solvers. So if you only have the top one, it will be 5. If you have the second level, it will be 55. And every level that you add to the list, obviously you're growing by orders of magnitude. So with this example, I think it is quite easy to see that we should not only increase the capacity of improvement that every person has. It is quite a big lever to also make sure that we have really everybody involved in problem solving. So the ideal case, if we could achieve this, would be to have something like 500 problems solved per day. If we do not solve enough problems, if we have more problems than problem solving capacity, we have to prioritize. Some problems are left unsolved, so we get in a firefighting mode because we're always behind. We are reacting. So if we want to get out of reacting because of the current problems we are having, we have to, in fact, develop a problem solving over capacity. So let's say if you have 3,000 problems per day that you have to solve, and you can only solve 1,000, 2,000 problems will remain unsolved. So you will always be behind. You will try to do Pareto and so on. So if you can solve more problems, you will be fine with all problems that are emerging. You will solve the problems of yesterday. You will solve the problems of today. And if you have problem solving over capacity, only then you will be able to think about the problems that you do not have, but the problems you might eventually have if you do not solve them now. So you start anticipating problems, you solve future problems. So what I think we should do with Kata is develop problem solving over capacity in our organizations. So if you have a group of people like this here in the picture working, how many problems could each one of them solve? So it's 5,550 and 5, if this was true. So now suppose for some reason that the people at the bottom, they would have 5,000 problems every day, but they would not have the capacity to solve them every day. So what would they do? Obviously, if they cannot solve them, they would escalate. So P's are problems. The problems are emerging everywhere. And at some point we get overwhelmed. We're not able to solve it. So we escalate. E are problems that need to be escalated. We go to the next level. Yeah, we go to our boss or try to find a specialist able to solve it. So how many problems could we escalate on a realistic view to the next level? So if the next level in this example could solve 500 problems, let's say we could split half in half and say, okay, these 100 persons at the second level, they could solve 250 of their own problems and 250 escalated problems. So if you do this calculation, as an example, obviously this is only an example, it means that out of 5,000 problems in an organization that really wants to improve how they solve problems, we can only escalate about 5% of all problems. So that means that 95% of all problems, if I just follow the math, should be solved at the level where they originate. And this for me, obviously, is something that requires a system that comprises all of the enterprise. And that's what moved me to think many years ago of Kata as routines, not as a tool. I try to understand Kata as routines inside of a management system that enables us to have everybody solving problems every day in a very, very efficient way. I was looking at this book here, the original book, yeah. And I was looking at page 62 and then reading a little bit. And there he talks about management systems. And he talks about the advantages and obviously the disadvantages of the return on investment management system that Sloan developed after surpassing, or maybe through this management system, surpassing Henry Ford in the 20s and 30s. And I was looking in many, many discussions over the years with Mike. Um, we came to realize that this management system also consists of rituals that are very deeply ingrained. In the first one, obviously, being the return on investment calculation or cost benefit analysis, which we use to make decisions. And we coach this method by asking how much will it cost, what will be the benefit, when will it pay off. And then we have on the other side a second routine or a second kata. We would never call it kata, but I think it is a kata. It's not the one we like, but it's also a routine. And it's the action item list, which Mike explains quite thoroughly in his book. So both of these routines, who is doing what until when, are the related coaching question, what's the current status? So these two routines, they have become so pervasive. They are so deep inside every organization that they become invisible. So it's just the way we're doing it now. And many people have forgotten that this management system wasn't there all the time, and there are other options. Alfred Sloan famously said, we're not in the business of making cars, we're in the business of making money. And this, I think, stands in stark contrast to what Fujio Cho said. Most car manufacturers, they build excellent cars. We build excellent people, and they build excellent cars at Toyota. Yeah, so all this time thinking about management systems, that's what brought us to eventually write Toyota Kata Culture. The idea, or what we're trying to solve, is how to have kata in a sustainable way and make it easy for everybody to do kata. And I think that eventually, and that is my working hypothesis, that's what I'm trying to do with a lot of people, is that I think it should to some extent replace the return on investment management system. But this is difficult to show. A lot of people struggle introducing kata. We have been talking, Tracy, about kata, and what a lot of people experience, I experience this myself, is that a lot of people interested in kata, they start practicing, but they are very successful with kata, but it just becomes very successful, very good working bubble. uh, I believe, Tracy, you called it a happy bubble of people doing kata, but at some point it just stops, and then you have both systems. You have some people doing kata and some people just doing the old return investment decision making following that pattern. Yeah, and I think that that is some kind of obstacle. Yeah. So if we want to have good results, I think everybody wants to have good results. We want to have good processes, but good processes result of good people, and we need good leadership to have good people motivated and capable. So it's a leadership task. We use the improvement kata, as you know, to develop good people, the coaching kata to develop good leaders. And the difficulty is many times that this takes time. So if you want to develop good leaders, you have to give it some time to develop their good people, which is what Toyota did over decades. And then through that, get to the good processes and then good results. But again, many times driven by this focus on quick returns, we tend to jump to activities that tend to yield good results or immediate results, which unfortunately in the long term many times end up being worse. In fact, I think it's quite interesting that General Motors that has been deciding everything to earn money, they're definitely earning less money than Toyota. We all know this. So I think the long-term focus should be here. And I've been working with lots of companies. These are pictures of a lot of companies in Europe. And the reason why I'm very happy to do this is because I've been trying to install Kata coaching as a management system by using what I call Kata coaching cascades. These Kata coaching cascades, I think they are a good catalyst for teams, for groups to get past the tipping point where I believe Kata can grow organically. So I think that if we want to introduce kata, we will always find some resistance. And if we do not keep on practicing and we do not keep pushing it, eventually we will roll back to our old habits, obviously. So my working question was all the time, how can I get to this tipping point where kata will grow organically, where you just start a chain reaction and it just grows. You just leave it there and it will grow. So where is this tipping point and how much time will it take? So obviously, if you got return on investment driven top managers that will ask you for a quick return all the time, the motivation is high to try to shorten this timeline to make sure that this tipping point is not years or decades ahead, that it's quite near. So I've been working on how can I reduce this tipping point to having a seed implanted in the organization so that Kata will grow as a management system. And doing lots of experiments, I was asking the question, what would be the minimum viable Kata practice that would grow organically? And researching and Googling minimum viable product, minimum viable, I stumbled upon origins of life research. It was very interesting about organic growth. And it's quite a mystery how life emerged on Earth. But most people agree that there must have been this minimum viable cell that was capable of mitosis and had proteins and so on. So there were a lot of preconditions that once they were given, life would explode. So my question was, what are the minimum viable kata practices for kata to grow, to stop rolling back all the time? So I came up with 6 things that I think are important. And obviously, this is again, it's a working process. So I'm showing you what I am learning, and I am open to discuss this. And you might agree or not agree with this. But whenever I have kata working long term, I find out it's the top managers that are practicing kata. So there are people leading their people by example. So they are not just telling you, I think it's great, you should do it. No, I will do it myself, and I will be the spear point of this activity. Since we're habit animals, I think it's very good to practice daily. That's another thing I realized. If we practice like 2 days per week or 3 days of coaching per week, the habitual thing is not to coach, and coaching is the exception. So most of the days we should be coaching. So we should go for daily. Most habits are linked to our very important star we have in the sky, which is the sun. And so most of our habits are linked to this 24-hour rhythm. And I think coaching should be daily too. Then one thing that I think is makes it easier for people, if you have a lot of people around doing something, it's easier to do it too. If you have a lot of people around you that are doing something different, it's very difficult to be the last Mohican standing there. Everybody's doing something else. It takes quite a big ego and convincing. So I think it's very good to use herd instinct as soon as you can and to unite the people, make them a team by giving them one shared target. Yeah. So then, as soon as they start learning, it's very important to ensure for fast communication, feedback, sharing a lot what is being learned. So have everybody learning from each other, with each other, sharing this learning. Have fun. It's very important to have fun. When you experiment, you learn there is a lot of setbacks. If you try something for the first time, if you really try to do something innovative that has never been done before, obviously drawbacks and mistakes are the rules. So having fun and having a trust environment is very, very important. So celebrating results and celebrating learnings is very important. And finally, I think everybody should coach because nobody learns more than a teacher. I think who is teaching, you learn most if you teach, much more than if you're the learner. And everybody needs a coach. Nobody is so good that he wouldn't need a coach. So we have to make kata a habit for the whole organization. So it's very important that instead of having people develop habits individually, we really need to develop a culture as fast as we can, and we shouldn't make difference between hierarchical levels. So all levels should be participating at the same time. So I think that if the boss is doing is his direct reports, and it should cascade down as soon as possible. So if you want to have a bigger team working towards one shared target condition, then obviously what we have to do is apply the improvement and coaching kata to the team. So the first step will be to do the target deployment, and we should do that before we obviously go into the executing, communicating, learning phase that comes afterwards. In the planning, there's a lot of learning here, but we usually start with the planning phase. What we do here is target deployment process, with all this catchball, nemawashi, agreeing on what the target is. This is a process that's very interesting. Here you see some pictures of people discussing what the target is. Yeah, at
I
least every
just
now
want
and
to
then.
clarify this, that when you're talking about targets, that's actually what we call the challenge, right? That's the big,
Yeah, the overarching
the
challenge. Yes.
overarching
Yeah.
challenge. Somehow, yeah,
Yes.
you're
Yes.
calling
Yes.
the targets. Okay.
What I use as overarching challenge, being a pupil of Mike, obviously, is value stream mapping. So we take a value stream as a overarching challenge, and we break down the targets from there. And then we move up as the cascades evolve to the business objectives, obviously, which are the financial objectives, and break down from there. And as they advance, we go higher. And so, yeah.
Okay. Fantastic.
What you see here also is groups of people physically united in a big room. It's a very immersive thing we do just to make sure that everybody buys in. It's very, very important if you start coaching, if you have these cascades running, that everybody uh, sees the overall challenge as their own challenge and they see themselves as a team. So you have to try to remove as many contradictions among all the targets and so on as you possibly can. So this is quite a thing. We practice a lot. We do a lot. It works quite well, and as a result of that, we eventually have something like this. And this is the coaching wall, I call it. And what you see here is the organizational chart, and you see who is coaching whom on what. And what you can also see is that at the top level, you have the top managers, at the bottom, you have the process improvers, and you see what they are all working on. This is just a very simple example. When we have the targets in place and they are synchronized with each other, then obviously the executing phase comes. And this is what wall looks like after being used. This is a real coaching wall. This is somewhere in Switzerland. And this is placed in what we call the kata room, which is some sort of, a war room. Toyota, it calls it Obeya. And what happens here is very quick communication. So the first thing that we do is communicate very fast vertically. So one thing that we try to do with these cascades is have very, very quick communication upwards. So we try to have problems flowing to the top as high as they have to flow in case of being escalated. Always this 5% or something like that rule. So not all problems are escalated, but if problems need to be escalated, they need to be escalated fast. So that's a very important thing. And when we escalate something, we want to make sure it's fast and that the information is very precise. So if you make these coaching cascades big with lots of people, another thing that's very interesting with Kata is that the coaching kata is an incredibly efficient method to communicate. So you can explain the results of a coaching cycle reading these cards you see here. So these tiny cards you see there, they are the cards that summarize what has been said in the coaching cycle. So there are different designs. This is the basic design. Then there are red ones for escalation. This doesn't substitute the coaching board. While the learner is writing on the coaching board all his next steps, learnings, and so on, the coach will copy word by word exactly the same wording on this card. And now the information gets transmitted upward using the words of the learner wherever he is in the factory. So you have zero information loss. And we will just read them. So when we are coaching all these people, at the very top, when Sally, here in the example, at the very top, there is Sally before starting group coaching, all these cards will be read. And the cards can be read in 1 minute. So informing about the results of 20 coaching cycles, what they did, what the last step was, what the next step will be, what the expectation is, and everything, you can read in just 20 minutes, which is a lot of information, very, very compact, very structured, very quick, very fast. So what we try to develop here is a high-paced management system with very high-paced communication with the intention to make sure that every problem is going to the best possible problem solver. So imagine now lots of people here communicating with each other in an efficient way without getting lost in too many words and too many misunderstandings, and making sure that those problems that really need to be solved at the highest level get filtered up to the very top. And for example, if you are in an office somewhere and you have having this group coaching and the top manager says, "Oh, this is a really important issue. I really need to go have a look." He can go straight to this person, one of 2,000 people in the factory, and he can read at the board exactly the same words that he got reported like 1 hour ago. So immediately they connect and they can start talking. And then what we do there is what we call the group coaching. And this is a group coaching in this war room or Obeya. And what happens then is after the information goes up vertically, you communicate down and horizontally. So you do downward and horizontal communication, which is a big problem in many organizations when they get really bureaucratic. If you have a big organization and you have a longer chain of command, and you have the situation you see here on the left, you have somebody in some division having a problem, and somebody, the potential problem solver, sitting completely far away distance from him in another division, which is very divided from the first division. So you need all this chain of command to communicate and explain that something has to be solved. And so this is very, very slow. It sometimes takes weeks and months to make this decision. That's the reason why we try to shorten this chain of commands by doing something like flat hierarchies. Obviously, the best way to communicate, if you have somebody who has a problem and somebody who has a solution in a different division, is direct horizontal communication. The problem is you are not allowed to make a decision with a colleague at the same level if your boss is not agreeing. In many cases, this is not allowed. So this obviously becomes faster and faster. It is much faster if I am qualified to solve the problem myself. I only have to ask my boss. And the fastest way to solve a problem is always if I am able to decide and solve it myself. So on the left side, you are taking months to solve a problem, maybe. And on the right side, you can come down to a few minutes. So we always try to move as far as we can to the right side, trying to avoid interfaces and avoid a long chain of communication. But it's not always possible to be on the right side where everybody is able to solve all the problems by themselves. So what you need to do is somehow legalize this direct horizontal communication. And that's what we do in this group coachings. What you do is you have everybody meeting, and they are meeting every day. So these group coachings, there you have sometimes 10 people, sometimes there are 30 people or even more, depending on the size of the organization. Everybody's invited. And if you have everybody meeting every day, you obviously have to have very short meetings. So in these meetings, we read the cards really quick. And then the top managers, in this example, Sally, chooses one of these four options for attending the obstacles that have been escalated. And the interesting thing is, no escalated problem is more than a few hours. We've been practicing this a lot at BMW in Germany, and BMW has up to 13 levels. So imagine communicating up the chain of command 13 levels, how much time that would take. So in an assembly plant, it's about 5 or 6 levels, but it takes about 3 hours to get to the plant manager. He's the boss of maybe around 10,000 people. And the informations he's getting, they are not more than 3 hours old. And after 3 hours, he can try to solve this problem by choosing one of these four options you see here on the dotted line on the right side. So if he can answer, obviously he can make a decision immediately. So everybody's present, everybody gets an answer, and we can go. If he cannot decide, many times he just has to give a specific instruction, do this and that. And after you have done this and that, I can make a decision. In some cases, obviously, the boss has to take care of the problem himself. That is the third option. So he says, I cannot give you an answer now, but I will take care of this problem. I will give you an answer in 1 day, 3 days, 1 week. And the fourth one, which is very interesting, the spontaneous building of a team that is able to decide. And yeah, we use these cascades to manage quite a complex process. So we do project management too. And when we have more complex projects that take a long time with a lot of resources, where you have to do the resource planning and define the milestones and everything, then we use this coaching wall, which becomes very, very powerful to reacting very quick to small deviations. So it takes me now about 10 days to do this. It's spread over 2 months, but after 2 months, 10 days of training, I get the cascades running. The reason I need 10 days is because I first have to teach them the instruments, and then I build the orchestra. I cannot build an orchestra and with the orchestra sitting, tell them first you learn your instruments and then you put together an orchestra. The moment I have good coaches, it takes like 5 days to build a cascade. That's the idea. That's what I've been trying to do, and that's what I am working on, trying to have kata as routines inside of a management system, which I hope eventually one day might substitute this return investment management system. Curiously, by making us much more profitable, like Ford was in the days he didn't use this return investment management system, or like Toyota is doing today. So I think if we really want to have kata installed into the culture of the companies, it has to permeate everything. It has to become so omnipresent that we don't see it anymore. And that has become something like my true north. Everybody thinks and works scientifically, and they don't even notice. So it's become part of how we people are. That's what I think a culture means. But to get to this tipping point, we have to practice somehow together. So I really suggest you try this. If the tipping point is only 2 or 3 months, then the chances that the top management says, okay, I can invest 2 months or 3 months, but not 10 years, then the chances that they try it is bigger. And once the virus is implanted, then the organic growth begins.
Thank you so much, Gerd, for taking this time. You know, it's late evening now in Germany, and so Gerd has given up his
Yeah,
Friday night to be with us, and we really, really appreciate it.
yeah, it was fun. So we can repeat this anytime if you want, Tracy.
Oh, don't say that because we will. We meet every Friday at Kata School Cascadia for coach discussion and sharing and reflections and learning. And of course, all of you are welcome to join us. And Gerd, we will maybe have you back before KataCon.
Yeah, thank you, Tracy.